Just when Ethan was about to give up, the person he had been thinking about returned from abroad. She angrily ripped the ring off his hand and threw it aside. She moved into the wedding house I had prepared and destroyed the flowers and plants I had carefully taken care of. I couldn't sleep at night because of the pain. He once cried and knelt in front of my parents, swearing that he would only love me in this lifetime. Later, he made her wear my pajamas and did something unforgivable to me on our wedding bed. I slapped that woman across the face. He shouted at me, saying I was crazy and to get away. Ethan, I am crazy, and I want to drag you all down with me. In the 4th year of being with Ethan, she suddenly appeared. She is Sophia, the person Ethan once loved the most. She left Ethan without hesitation for her dreams and went to the UK. After she returned, Ethan suddenly started ignoring me. We were clearly about to get married, and the wedding house was already decorated with double happiness characters. That day I went to his company to pick him up for our anniversary, and before he saw me, Sophia smiled and pointed to my location. So you are Ethan's fiancé? You're actually quite good looking. She looked me up and down with a proud expression. It turns out Ethan often stares at me blankly, then gives me a hurried, forceful kiss, burying his head in my shoulder and softly saying, "Don't go." It's all because of her. You look so silly right now, not at all like me, but at least you tried. Sophia, looking displeased, reached out her hand to push my bangs aside. It was as if she was teaching me how to imitate her better. I turned my head to avoid her. Her hand paused in midair, awkwardly lowering down. "What's wrong with your fiancé?" She whined in a cutesy tone to Ethan, pinching her voice. "Ugh, I really don't often dislike someone this much." She overestimates herself, or maybe she takes Ethan too seriously. I threw the suit in my hand at that woman, and Ethan suddenly swapped places with her. The slap that was supposed to hit his face landed on hers instead. The palm didn't hurt as much as I imagined. Maybe I didn't hit it hard enough. I was stunned for a moment, suppressing a laugh. "Hey sister, could you not touch someone else's bangs so casually?" I frowned and looked at her with a pitiful expression. Since I was little, they've said I have a dual personality. I seem quiet and obedient, but in reality, I'm very stubborn. Dad laughed and lifted me onto his lap, saying this child is spoiled but has a good heart. Ethan shouted angrily, "Emily, you're going too far." He kicked the suit that had fallen on the ground aside, and my handwritten anniversary card fell out. Sophia seemed startled by my sudden slap. It took Ethan a long time to calm her down. My heart twisted in a knot, making it hard for me to breathe. Ethan walked over, continuously pushing me back, stepping hard on that suit, and the card on the ground got muddy under his feet. I covered my chest, gasping for air. The slap landed on Sophia's face, but my face and heart hurt more than my hand. People around heard the commotion and all gathered around. Ethan angrily told me to get lost. I yelled at him, "If you take her away, it's over for us." He sneered disdainfully and looked over coldly. It should have ended a long time ago. Ethan embraced her and pushed through the crowd to leave. I braced myself not to fall, watching their figures grow further away. Suddenly, my heart ached. The world suddenly became blurry, and everything went dark. Through the crowd, I only saw Ethan's disgusted look as he turned away. Ethan kept his word. He never appeared before me again and even voluntarily resigned from the manager position at my father's company. I spent all day with the blanket over my head, lying on the hospital bed in a daze. Since I fainted that day, I was sent to the hospital. The doctor said I had cancer, that it couldn't be cured, and I would live for at most 3 more months. I smiled at my parents and said, "That's such a cliché, with a good mindset, I'll naturally live longer." My mother's lips trembled, wanting to say something but unable to, tears continuously streaming down as she just kept nodding. My father sat beside me with his head down, listless. For the first time, I felt how oppressive it was at home. After he found out about the situation between Ethan and me, he angrily said he would take care of Ethan. I imitated my mother's way, clasped my hands together to pray for him, hoping my dad would let him go. The buzzing sound of the ventilator kept humming, my left hand was severely swollen, and the pain from the dialysis made me unable to help but call out to my parents. The familiar home gradually filled up with medical equipment, the table was covered with bottles and jars, and my mom was sticking talismans one by one on the wall. I suddenly remembered that wedding room covered in double happiness characters, all red, filled with the flowers and plants I had taken care of, along with a few of my favorites that I specially brought from home, to make the new life of Ethan and me more vibrant. I think it's time these should be used to make myself happy, just for me. The last bottle of 4 drip has also finished. I sat in front of the makeup mirror, looking at my increasingly thin and pale face. Pat some powder to cover it up. Still quite pretty, huh? I whispered to myself. It's just that I've put on a bit too much powder, and wearing flat shoes is more comfortable, nothing special. I smiled at my reflection in the mirror. I gently closed the door and told my aunt that I was going out for a walk. She hesitated and said nothing, but her face was filled with worry. I hesitated for a moment and thought, maybe it's better not to worry anyone. She took my hand, gently touched it, and tears kept falling. Aunt, what's wrong? Who made you angry? I held her hand tightly. Go ahead, a walk might help clear your mind and improve your mood. She looked at me with tears in her eyes, her gaze filled with warmth. I held her in my arms and patted her back slowly, just like she used to do to me when I was little. As I pushed the door open, it felt like sand got in my eyes. I counted the residential buildings in front of me, wondering if it was building 21 or 22. The security guard saw me standing there, looking around, and thought I looked suspicious, assuming I was a thief. He directly shouted into my ear with a loudspeaker, saying that no unauthorized personnel were allowed inside. My nerves suddenly became excited, and my spirits lifted. I shook the keys and cheerfully rushed into the elevator of Building 20, Room 504. Ethan told me that he fell deeply in love with me the first time he saw me on May 4th, 2020. I laughed and asked him if that was love at first sight or if he just thought I looked good. He gently kissed me and said it was fate arranged by heaven. I nervously pressed the button for the 5th floor, wondering if he had already sold the house. Would his new job be particularly hard, and would the salary be low? Could he still pay the mortgage on time? We initially agreed to each contribute half the money to buy the house in full, but he refused to acknowledge that, insisting he could provide a good life for me on his own. This was his promise to my parents back then. Ding! I've arrived. I lightly stepped on the floor, nervously looking around. This is it, 504. My hand trembled a bit as I slowly reached for the door plate. They started renovating in spring. It should be ready for people to move in now, right? Are the furnishings still those that I picked out with him back then? I touched the keys in my pocket, hesitating whether to try opening the door. Oh! Isn't that Emily? A sound came from over by the elevator. I slowly straightened up and put the key back in my pocket. What's wrong? Have you stooped to picking locks to steal? Her tone was filled with sarcasm. I lowered my eyes and quickened my pace, just wanting to get away from her. Although it hurt, she still insisted on blocking my way, not willing to take a single step back. Please let me through, I said politely. She reached out and rummaged through my pocket. I was pushed to the ground by that force. She looked down at me with disdain. This is our business. It has nothing to do with you. Big drops of sweat splashed onto the shiny floor. I braced myself on the ground, trying to get up. Sophia looked at me, who was slowly moving on the ground, with excitement. I had a bad feeling. She lowered her head and used her pinky to lift my chin, forcing me to look up. She stared at my face and said in a mocking tone, "With such thick makeup on your face, you still want to learn from me?" She disdainfully shook off my hand, and now she's learned to play the victim? Ethan told me that every time he kisses you, he feels nauseous and almost throws up. He's only doing this for money and status. After saying that, he stepped over me. Laughter echoed in the hallway. But he is willing to give up everything for me. She tried to take another step, and I quickly grabbed her ankle, pulling her back with all my strength. Sophia yelled angrily, "Are you crazy? Just wait and see how I deal with you." She quickly stood up and waved her high heels at me. At that moment, the elevator door opened with a ding. Ethan walked out with a briefcase. I clearly saw his brows furrowed. "What are you doing?" he asked in a tired voice. Then he looked at Sophia, who was going mad with the high heels. Our eyes met at that moment. There was a small droplet on the floor, which might be my tear. Sophia quickly put on her shoes and gently linked her arm with his. "That's her. She tried to sneak into our house just now, but I stopped her." Ethan gently shook off her hand and whispered that she should come in since she has a share here too. Humph. Just because you have money and power at home makes you impressive? Sophia spat angrily at me. I leaned against the wall, struggling to stand up. He opened the door, and she bounced in after him. But his back looked so lonely. I stood at the door, surveying the decor inside, which hadn't changed at all. The furniture was still the same as before. Sophia was holding a broom at the door, already changed into her pajamas. I recognized it as the red couple's outfit I bought for our wedding day. My eyelids kept twitching. Our home is pretty nice, right? She glanced at the direction Ethan had left, then lowered her head, leaned close to my ear, and smiled as she said, "Our bed is indeed quite nice." I felt a sharp pain in my heart, but it wasn't because I was sick. I forced a smile, my shoulders shaking uncontrollably. "Can you return the flowers on the balcony to me?" I held back my sadness, my voice trembling slightly. She called out Ethan's name loudly, and he walked towards me holding a blooming red rose. In that moment, he seemed to turn back into the person he used to be. My eyes were already filled with tears. He slowly approached me, and I could see the irritation in his eyes, no longer the tenderness from before. "Take it. Catch it well." He coldly shoved the flower pot into my hands. I reached out to catch it, but he released the flower pot too soon. Other flowers had long since withered. This pot is probably the same. Sophia's surprised cheers and the sound of the door slamming were left behind. I squatted down and picked up the still blooming flower. The thorns on the stem cut my hand. Bright red blood dripped onto the petals. "Ethan, as long as you return the flowers to me, I will ask my father not to make things difficult for you, so you can work and live in peace." "Ethan, I can't take it anymore," I said softly, my hair a messy tangle against my face. I hugged myself tightly, my trembling hands constantly patting my shoulders. Ethan once said that whenever he felt overwhelmed, he would use this method to motivate himself. "You've worked hard." I leaned into his arms, looking up at him with tears in my eyes. "From now on, this job is up to me." He was taken aback for a moment. "All right. The most important thing now is to make our little princess happy." As he spoke, he gently tickled me with his hand. We laughed and created a ruckus together. That day was as gloomy and rainy as today, but my heart was warm and bright. I tried hard to pull myself together and walked towards the entrance of the community, but my body wouldn't listen, feeling weak and limp, with a heavy block in my chest. The security guard put down the loudspeaker and helped me walk slowly forward. The child stopped mid-sentence, making my heart ache. He saw me in such an embarrassing situation, I really felt ashamed. I wanted to break free from his hand, rush into the sunlight, make a face at him, and say that I was just kidding. Who told him to suspect me of stealing in the first place? But my hands just won't move. "Please help me call a taxi." I raised my eyes and forced a smile at him, but my gaze instinctively looked away. He helped me into the car, and I kept my head down, not daring to look at him. Once the car drove far away, I quietly said thank you. The building gradually receded, looking smaller and smaller. This time was completely different from when I first came. "Ethan, this is the last time I will help you." "No, absolutely not." Dad was so angry he kept banging the table. I grabbed his arm, pouting like when I was a child. "Dad, let's stop fighting, let him go, and let us go too." He paced back and forth in the room. I followed behind him, continuously calling out, "Dad, Dad, my good dad." Mother occasionally put down her book and smiled at us, just like when we were kids. Dad's tone was firm, and I pouted, turning to my mom for help with a glance. I had just turned around to find her. My heart was racing, and my vision went dark. "I have a bit of a headache." I kept my eyes closed and didn't open them. "The smell of disinfectant is floating around. It's starting again." I curled up, clenching the blanket, trembling uncontrollably. "I'm going to have dialysis again." "Mom? Dad?" I softly called out to my parents, wanting to see if they were there. The sound echoed in the empty room. I felt a wave of unease and struggled to prop myself up with my arms. Everything around me was pitch black. I couldn't see anything. I felt weak all over and slowly moved to find something to support myself. I pushed open the door. The sunlight was too bright, and the noisy sounds made me feel a bit more at ease. I leaned against the wall and inched forward little by little. "Excuse me, please make way." I gently tapped the man blocking my way. Then I started to breathe heavily. "I'm sorry." He moved aside a bit, giving me some room. I originally wanted to look up and say thank you to him. I struggled hard but couldn't muster any strength. As I forced a nod to thank him, my fingers suddenly cramped, and I fell backward. A wave of warmth spread across my back. He caught me. "Where are you going?" "I'll take you." I wanted to say no, but remembering the earlier awkwardness, I nodded instead. "At the hospital entrance." "Thank you." He extended his arm, and I leaned against him, trembling. I tried to move forward, but my body swayed uncontrollably. He took my hand and gently placed it on his shoulder. Without saying a word, he just smiled at me. Just like that. Just as I wanted to pull my hand back, I was stopped by a sharp voice. "Don't move. Now I've caught a good show." As she spoke, she pulled out her phone from her bag and started snapping pictures of us. I frowned and covered my face with my hand. "Do you know her?" An impatient voice came from beside me. I looked at him and shook my head. "Hey! I'm still here. Are you two already exchanging glances?" He spoke with righteous indignation, like an honest person, saying, "If you want to cause trouble, I can call the police." This understated remark startled both Sophia and me. Sophia's anger visibly diminished. "Ethan!" Sophia called out sweetly as she ran towards the man across from her. Ethan looked a bit thinner than before, and his hair had grown longer. He reached out to hug Sophia and glanced in our direction. I immediately lowered my head and dared not look at them. Sophia became haughty again, encountering an annoying guy. She pointed at me, openly showing her disdain. Ethan gently touched her hair, only slightly furrowing his brow. "Don't say that." He patted my hand, and I wanted to turn and leave. He pulled my hand forward and said through clenched teeth, "You got yourself into this mess after flirting?" Sophia felt her waist being squeezed tighter. It wasn't until she cried out in pain that Ethan finally reacted. "Emily, stop dragging your feet." Ethan's face appeared in my mind with that sentence. I suddenly had a bad thought. I let go of that person's hand and said thank you. She turned around and staggered towards the front door. "Ethan, if we are to die, let's die together." "Ethan." I staggered after him, calling his name. He didn't stop at all, not even turning around. I could see the distance between us growing farther. I used my last bit of strength and collapsed onto the damp floor. "Ethan is the name we agreed to give our child after we get married." "Emily, let's have a child after we get married." Ethan leaned against my shoulder and whispered, "I've already thought of it. The child's name will combine our names and be called Ethan." I smiled while playing with his fingers and said, "What if you don't marry me in the future?" He leaned closer and whispered in my ear, "That won't happen. If I were so heartless, and you called the child by that name, I would definitely regret it." He slowed down and turned around. I saw him take a deep sigh. He hasn't forgotten. Sophia tightly grabbed the corner of his clothes, urging him to leave quickly. Her bright, sparkling eyes looked at him. Ethan pushed her hand away. Raindrops fell into the puddle Ethan had stepped in. "I know, we are doomed." My tears were welling up in my eyes. It's hard to tell if it's genuine or just for show. I don't know what happened. It was just when Ethan crouched down, I reached out and wrapped my arms around his neck. He suddenly lifted me up. Rainwater slid down his face, and I gently touched his furrowed brow. I caught a glimpse of Sophia frozen in place. "Isn't that just me from before?" Ethan held me and slowly walked toward the hospital room I mentioned. "No, wait." I pointed in a different direction. I held on to this moment of warmth tightly. When he finally decided he didn't want to play this game with me anymore and planned to put me down, my lips gently pressed against his. "Let's start over." I felt his body tremble slightly. He sneered, then stared at me closely and asked, "Want an opportunity?" "That depends on yourself." I tugged at his tie and kissed him again. He didn't respond or push me away. I gently pulled back and separated from him. I raised my hand to wipe the droplets from the corner of his mouth. My fingers fumbled to unbutton his jacket. Ethan's breathing became rapid. He pushed my hand away and glanced around. Pointing at the proctology sign, he asked me, "Are you feeling unwell?" I was taken aback, my heart tightened, and I forced a flattering smile, replying, "Just what you're thinking." "You haven't answered me yet." I was about to reach out and grab him when the phone suddenly rang. He picked up the phone and hurried away. It must be Sophia calling. I leaned against the wall, my mind in a jumble. Before I even asked God for forgiveness, Sophia charged at me angrily. She raised her hand, and it seemed my idea really worked. I didn't dodge. I stood there dazed, waiting for her to make a move. "You naughty girl." She scolded me while walking over as I had predicted. I covered my face, gasping in pain. I turned to Ethan, who was standing behind her, and asked with wide eyes, what happened to her. Ethan hated making a fool of himself in front of everyone. He grabbed Sophia's hand, trying to leave, but she forcefully broke free from his embrace. The surroundings were noisy, mixed with her cries. She kept pounding her fists against Ethan's chest. I walked over and grabbed her hand just before she could hit Ethan. That would hurt him. I didn't look at Sophia at all. I silently watched Ethan. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly. Sophia wiped her tears and turned her anger towards me. I didn't react in time to avoid her. Ethan suddenly shouted and pushed Sophia aside. "Stop making a scene." She was too scared to make a sound and stopped crying. "Just go." That was directed at me. I shook his hand without hesitation and turned to leave. Ethan came to the hotel and knocked on the door. I put down the red wine, walked over barefoot, and kissed him. "She didn't make things difficult for you, did she?" I touched his stubble and whispered in his ear. Ethan leaned weakly in my arms. "She can't compare to you. I miss you. Let's get back together." He took out the pair of wedding rings. At that time, Sophia forcibly pulled it off my hand, saying I didn't deserve to wear the same ring as Ethan. Now the ring should return to its rightful owner. He smiled innocently, like a child, just like when he gave it to me back then. "Oh, dear Miss Emily, will you marry me?" "Yes, dear Mr. Ethan, I would love to." We practiced it over and over again, until one morning Ethan suddenly woke me up. I went downstairs, quietly complaining that it wasn't light yet, and asked him where he was driving so early. In a half-dream, he gently kissed me. Then Ethan took me to that house that hadn't been renovated yet. He knelt on one knee to propose to me. I thought our happy life was about to begin. I came to my senses. "What about her?" Ethan's smile suddenly froze. "Do you care about her?" I smiled slightly and gently brushed Ethan's eyes. I love his eyes the most, clear and bottomless. If I could go back to the past, she wouldn't matter at all. Suddenly, there was a rapid knocking at the door. I looked at Ethan in surprise. Ethan looked at the door in confusion. "Did you bring someone?" At that moment, Sophia's voice came through. "Emily, open the door. Are you so disobedient? One isn't enough for you, you want to provoke too, right?" Clearly, I arrived first. First come, first served. Ethan must be mine. I stared at him intently. I gave him a look, signaling that it was his turn to step up. He straightened his clothes and strode over. His back looked just as confident as before, but now it only felt repulsive. Sophia tightly grabbed Ethan's arm and whispered, "Stop yelling. Didn't I explain it clearly yesterday?" She shook her head while admitting her mistake. "It's my fault. I know I was wrong." Her hair was messily stuck to her face, and her makeup was smudged from crying. I called out Ethan's name with a choked voice. Sophia was desperately clawing at the door, trying to get in. Ethan suddenly broke free from her grip, causing her to fall to her knees on the ground. I carefully stepped on the floor, shyly hiding behind Ethan. I quietly poked my head out and asked softly, "Are you okay?" Sophia suddenly sprang up from the ground and uncontrollably scratched Ethan's face. Blood was running down his face, dripping onto the floor. "Miss, you have blood on your face. Do you need to wipe it?" I raised my hand and gently wiped the bloodstains off Ethan's face. "Or should I lick it off for you?" Ethan looked at me in surprise, then bent down to whisper in her ear, "Sophia, behave. Do you know how powerful her family is? It's only a matter of time before they deal with you." He gently brushed her hair aside. "It's just an act. You took it too seriously. We can still be like we used to. Be good. Listen to me. Do you really want to go back to living a poor life?" I looked disdainfully at the two people on the ground. Fortunately, Ethan was just pretending. Otherwise, I would really end up in hell after I die. "Come on, sister, hurry up. I need to quickly take Ethan to see my dad. The blood on the floor has already dried." Sophia's tongue fell on the ground. "It can't be cleaned no matter how hard I try." I shook my head. "I'm done with it." Sophia immediately threw up. Sigh, "It's dirty again." "Ethan, why don't you clean it up?" I was so excited that I kept coughing. Ethan looked uncomfortable, and Sophia was still throwing up. When I said this, Ethan's eyes shone brightly. For a moment, I softened my heart. I haven't seen such a look in a long, long time. "Anyone can." I finally spoke those words out loud. I called security and had them keep an eye on things until it was done. "Let's see how deep your feelings are." I bent down and gently touched Ethan's hair. "I'll wait for you downstairs." 10 minutes later, Ethan came downstairs. I noticed that the corners of his mouth were very clean. I couldn't help but feel a bit contemptuous towards Sophia. You really know how to treat someone. Get in the car. I helped him open the car door. Ethan leaned back in the seat and couldn't help but sigh. It feels great to have power and influence. I thought I should get my parents a new chair too. This is just too dirty. Emily, now you should believe me, right? I said to her with a smile. Didn't you say you always loved me? What can I believe now? He reached out his hand, wanting to hug me. I turned my face towards the car window. You loved me so much before, and now I finally understand. His voice was a bit shaky. When there's no money, nothing you say matters. She spends money without knowing how to be restrained. If it weren't for you and my father-in-law helping back then, I really wouldn't know what to do. I tried hard to force a smile, but my lips just wouldn't cooperate. It felt like the muscles in my face were frozen. There was no other way, so I covered my face, pretended to cry, and squeezed my voice to act along with him. It's not too late to understand now. I will wait for you. The car drove into the yard. Mom was sitting in a chair, and Dad was standing next to her. The yard was filled with flowers that I loved. Finally home. I'm really exhausted today. Before the car even came to a stop, Ethan rushed to open the door, but tripped and fell flat on the ground. His knees scraped against the ground, sliding for a bit, and tears streamed down his face uncontrollably. Dad, Mom, I was wrong. I truly realized my mistake. He repeatedly knocked his head on the ground. It started raining again. Mom and Dad looked at me, then shifted their gaze to Ethan. He used to plead with them like this to agree to our marriage. It has only been a few months. Everything familiar has changed. I held my father's outstretched hand, while Mom gently wiped away my tears. Ethan, we can forgive you. Father's expression was serious, making it hard to believe. I pleaded behind him for a long time before he finally spoke up. Ethan promised Mom that he would get proper treatment at the hospital and wouldn't run around anymore. He had a big bump on his head, looking quite unsightly. Mom wanted to cover my eyes with her hand. I smiled and squatted down, and Mom's hand just blocked my face. Dad stopped him and pointed to the roses in the yard, telling him to pick 99 by himself. Ethan looked at me with a pleading expression. I frowned and looked seriously at Father. Then I reached out and gave him a thumbs up. Dad, you're really cool. Ethan's expression changed from grievance to anger. But he didn't dare to resist. It was a rainy day with a cold wind. As I pulled them inside, Ethan's hand got scratched by a rose thorn. It didn't hurt much, but it was still uncomfortable. By the time it was almost evening, he had only picked over 40 flowers. He kept glancing at me by the window, so I directly picked up my cup and finished the drink. At that moment, Sophia's anxious voice came from outside the door. That despicable Ethan. Don't think you can just leave me behind. You say this is a plan, but you've been gone for so long to enjoy yourself, right? You are really going too far. The security tried to drive her away, but she kept coming back, refusing to let go. Ethan stood among the flowers, frowning and sighing. It's really ironic. I actually cried for someone like him. Sophia is right, he is truly excessive. But the one who suffers is me. I opened the door and walked out. As before, I asked him, Ethan, do you know why you have to pick flowers? You promised me. Ethan's face twitched, glaring at me in anger. I still didn't get the flowers I wanted. I hung my head and sat on a bench by the roadside. You smiled and promised me that you would plant roses in the yard, and when the sun sets, you would pick them one by one for me. Ethan said nothing. He silently stood up from the mud, dropped the flowers in his hand, and punched me in the face. He threw a punch, but was immediately pulled away by someone. Emily, you're being too much. I already agreed to come back, and you're treating me like this. Sophia had no tears of remorse, only defiance. She was let in and hurried over to Ethan, helping him up after being pushed down by the security guard. Ethan angrily broke free from her grasp. She kicked and hit Ethan like a madwoman. Look at how you are now, and you still have the nerve to despise me. You might as well go die. Get out of my sight. Mom gently touched my face, while Dad called the police. Both of them had red eyes, staring intensely at me. I forced myself to stand up and patted their shoulders. These clowns in my family really put on a good show. Mom wiped away her tears and scolded me for not being serious. In the rain, Ethan held Sophia tightly, repeatedly saying he was sorry. Sophia grabbed his hand, gently blowing on it, asking if it hurt. They looked like a loving couple, while I felt like an outsider. I heard the sirens in the distance, and I knew they wouldn't face too severe a punishment. People must bear the consequences of their actions. The higher the status, the heavier the price to pay. I hope they can forgive me for the harm I've caused as I leave. I leaned gently against my mother's hand, cleared my throat, and sat up straight. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for supporting me in this endeavor with all your might. Finally, I let out a breath. I will love you forever. I embraced them seriously, as if I were giving a speech. I was smiling, but suddenly felt a lump in my throat. He vomited, and the blood was black. My father quickly took out his phone to call 911. My mother held my hand tightly, trembling all the while. I hurriedly wiped my mouth, not wanting to worry my mother. It's okay, Mom. I've really been much better lately, I promise. I waved my hand. I coughed up more blood, splattering it on the petals. I felt weak all over, and my head began to spin. I seemed to see the sun, but it was too dazzling. I covered my eyes with my hand and muttered softly, maybe it's just a fleeting moment of clarity. The world before me was swallowed by white light. Is this how I die? Absolutely not. I'm still alive and well. Life hasn't been easy. My mom still insists on making me take my medicine, and my dad is still very busy with work, but he always makes time to talk and read with me on weekends. Recently, I've had to go to the hospital much less often. I heard that Ethan and Sophia have already left. They returned to the little town where they first met. I think Ethan is so smart and capable. He can do well anywhere. And Sophia, she's even more impressive. Her cheerful personality and positive attitude make her particularly good at interacting with people. I looked at the 99 roses my parents sent me. The flowers slowly wilted, and then they were replaced with a new bouquet. Just kidding, actually I've been gone for a long time.